Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
Welcome back to the podcast, brothers. This is Rhit, past master and current secretary of Fort Worth 148.
This is Jagush, current senior deacon of Fort Worth 148, and we have a special guest today.
My name is John Brengle. My mother lodge is Liberty Hill, number 432. I'm currently the marshal for Austin Lodge 12, where I'm also a past master twice.
Oh, double past master.
Well, triple as past master of Liberty Hill as well.
Oh, look at you. So does that make you extra grumpy, John?
No, it makes me extra happy because it's been years.
Yeah.
You haven't had to repeat a fourth time.
Nope. All of those were special terms, and specialness has fallen out. Now I'm glad of that.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I guess we better mention real quick, Gabe, that Billy's not joining us. He's headed to Oklahoma tomorrow.
Yes, so he is traveling, and we are wishing him the best. He will be attending the Grand Commandery of Oklahoma's Grand Conclave, and so we wish him the best in his travels, and we hope that he has a lot of fun with our Okie brethren up there. We hope that he says hi and that they all have a fantastic time. Carry on, Sir Knights. So we have, let's talk about our discussion question. And Rhit, you found this one, so why don't you walk this one in for us?
All right, let's do it. So this one I got off of Texas Freemasons by Austin Oliver. And I think the answers kind of got twisted up. It was a great discussion, but he was asking, does getting endowed actually hurt the Grand Lodge and the fraternity as a whole? Or does it just hurt the little lodges that aren't bringing in much for dues? And, I even got wrapped up in it, that explaining how it's not a good thing for the lodge. Well, he already knew that part, but he was wondering if it's a good thing for the Grand Lodge or not, which got me digging in the law book. And bottom line is, it is a good thing for Grand Lodge, no matter what. They get paid up to 5%. I don't know what they take every year of what's paid out. So I'm assuming if there's no payout, they don't get anything. But if there's a payout of $100, they get up to $5.
Yeah, that's the way I understand it too. One of our past masters is on the finance committee, and that's what he said. If they don't make anything, they still pay out to the lodges, but they don't get anything.
Yeah. And see, the recent change, because there used to be years where we didn't get anything.
Right.
And the way I read the law now is that we get at least 3% even in those crummy years.
Mm-hmm.
To where hopefully we don't have any more of those years where we don't get anything. Because 3% is better than nothing. But yeah, it's a good thing. I did a little figuring up to where, let's say, 800 lodges in Texas, which is just keeping it simple.
Mm-hmm.
Each lodge has $20,000 worth of endowments. That's $16 million total invested. So if there's a 5% payout, that's going to be $800,000 distributed between 800 lodges. Grand Lodge gets up to 5% of that, which is 5% would be $40,000. So it's a good thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of scratching both backs, I guess. But the conversation did get geared more towards how lodges need to price their endowments appropriately, because set at $500, it can get you in a pickle as a lodge.
Right, and
Yep.
that's kind of where the discussion almost always heads. But the fact that that's where the discussion almost always heads is a good thing, because I think it is finally starting to settle in the collective Masonic unconscious of Texas that something needs to be done about that. Although I do have a bone to pick with the question. Does getting endowed actually hurt the Grand Lodge and the fraternity as a whole, or does it just hurt the little lodges that aren't bringing much from dues? And here, my bone to pick is actually hurt the Grand Lodge and the fraternity as a whole. And I would argue that even if it benefits the Grand Lodge, it does hurt the fraternity as a whole, because the fraternity is the constituent lodges. The Grand Lodge is just the organization that keeps the fraternity running.
Yeah.
And so if it hurts the constituent lodges, then yes, it does hurt the fraternity as a whole. The macro organization of the Grand Lodge is, at least in my opinion, independent from the concept of fraternity, which honestly doesn't necessarily even require lodges. But that's a different discussion.
Yeah, I have a little bit different take on that. In fact, I use a bumper sticker on my truck that says "Education, not legislation." And I believe one of the things that we need to do is educate our brethren who get endowments, no matter what their cost, that they go ahead and pony up for the regular fees anyway.
Yeah, if the lodge has meal fees, pony up for that. The per capita,
Right.
pony up for that.
Yeah.
It's very reasonable.
You got a great point, because there's so many ways. I mean, they can add to that endowment. The endowment could be priced properly. You can get endowed for cheap and keep paying due. There's so many options, but nobody knows them. I tell you, when I Control F membership endowment program in Grand Lodge, there's a lot of results. That's a lot of legislation in there to go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for most people, that's off-putting.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You've got to kind of have a knack for reading through that, or at least kind of it doesn't feel like your eyes go cross-eyed.
Yeah, at least a tolerance.
Yeah, there you go.
So let's go ahead and jump back into the main subject. The main subject of tonight's episode, or today's episode if you're listening on Thursday morning, is the candidate process of Austin Lodge number 12. And here to talk about it is our special guest, John Brengle. So, John, thank you very much for coming on and discussing this with us.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So, John, can you tell us a little bit about yourself outside of the Masonic lens?
I'm retired, have been for, a couple of decades now. Okay, I gotta back that up. I don't have a 9-to-5 job. I still have a couple of companies that I work with, a crypto mining company, and I still do business consulting. And I'm an ex-school teacher. I grew up in the central north of the United States, where Wyoming, South Dakota, and Montana meet. I was a ranch kid. I was the only kid in my grade for 5 years in a row, from 2nd through 7th grade.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of had a pretty unique thing that I had good teachers during that, because I was dyslexic as can be. And I had an hour and a half personal attention from my teacher every day.
Oh, wow.
And that was my dyslexia training, and I am so thankful for her for all those years. I moved down to Austin in '75 after completing a construction project. I built things for 30 years, general construction, houses, and light industrial, like I was building a Motel 6 at the time, that I decided to come to South Dakota when I finished that in October, and did not want to spend another winter doing construction in South Dakota. Not fun.
Very reasonable.
So I moved to Texas and got here on November 1st and left a snowstorm, and was waiting outside on the porch of my friend's place with a 6-pack of beer and shorts and a T-shirt at 5 o'clock in the afternoon when they came home, and I'm just going, I have arrived. Yes. It was a beautiful thing.
That is beautiful.
And I spent the rest of my time in and around Austin, mostly building houses. And like I said, some light construction. And then I got into healthcare. I was a respiratory therapist for a few years and a hospital administrator, and then I got an MBA and did business brokering for a while, and I still do a little bit of that, buy and sell businesses. And I've been a Masonaholic for about 25 years now.
Oh,
Living the
that's awesome,
life.
Masonaholic.
Well, that's my wife's term.
Yeah, I like that.
And she loves it too. I mean, she's got her stuff too, so she likes that I enjoy my Masonry so much, and I really do.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
It's awesome.
My wife also
So-
has a term for it, but she just calls all of us nerds. She's not wrong. You know, I was
No,
telling
she's
her,
not.
she was like,
It's
"So
very
you do,
loving.
so you do what, and then you do what?" You know, and I'm not talking about anything secret or anything like that. I'm just talking about various like lodge traditions or, you know, books that I've read. And
Your
she'll-
various collection of hats.
Yeah, the hats
Clothes.
especially, the various collection of hats, you know, between the cowboy hat for conferring degrees and the Scottish Rite cap and the Templar chapeau and the Templar garrison cap that I have as an alternate to my chapeau. You know, she goes, "You guys are just dorks." And I'm just like, "Yep, that sounds about
Yes.
right."
In a word, yes.
Yeah. Proud
Yep.
of it. So, John, when did you join and how old were you?
I joined in '95, and I was, let's see. Well, I was born in '48, so what's that put?
You don't put the math on me.
In the middle of '40s, somewhere in there.
There you go. Awesome. Which lodge did you join?
My mother lodge is Liberty Hill 432.
That's right. That's right. You told us that. What inspired you to jump into the fraternity?
Well, I've always been a minor philosopher. I really like philosophy, and I'm just in my philosophy explorations, I came across Freemasonry, and I started doing a bunch of reading on it. And then I went up in the late '80s to visit my parents in South Dakota, and Father saw one of my books that I was reading on Masonry, and he said, "Are you a Mason?" I said, "No, but I'm thinking about it." He said, "It's a good organization, you know. Your grandfather was, and I am." I went,
Oh, wow.
"Oh, really?" Well, then I was looking back, and I remember when I was 13, my grandfather died. And this is in that little town of Buffalo, South Dakota. It has about 300 people in it, and it's way out in the middle of ranch country. Nobody has anything but cowboy hats, blue jeans, and boots.
Oh, yeah.
Yet at his funeral, I saw 6 men in tails, top hats, white leather aprons, and white gloves carrying my grandfather to the grave. Now, it didn't hit me at the time what was going on because I didn't know anything about Masonry. And my grandfather was my favorite dude in the world, you know, so I was just distraught. And it wasn't until that moment when my dad said, "Your grandfather was a Mason," and I had a little knowledge behind me, that scene just snapped right back into my head. And I go, "Of course." It was like a revelation.
How many times have we heard the funeral thing come up for that? That's
I've
so
lost
powerful.
count. I've legitimately
Yeah.
lost count. It is one of the most impactful things that drives men to Masonry.
Oh, when I tell everyone I see, man, woman, and child, that if they get a chance to go see a Masonic service, they should. Because I don't care where you are, it's one of the most impactful services you can have.
Wow. So, kind of a side question: do you happen to know how many Masons are in South Dakota now? I know that's
I believe the last time I checked, there were under 10,000,
yeah, gotcha.
about 8,000 something.
Yeah, because we get so wrapped up with ours. You know, we're one of the bigger ones in the United States, and we forget others. You know, are the size of some of our districts.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Rhit, that's a weird humble brag right there.
Well, it is, but I envy that in a way. You know, because smaller units tend to get things done. Not saying we don't, but you know, in a way, that's kind of a unique opportunity.
There is value in agility that is given by smaller sizes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, certainly. For one thing, they don't have a Grand Lodge building to pay for. They hold their Grand Lodges, at various places around the state. So that's another thing they can move.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd probably be a little easier, with a smaller crowd.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to do that really with the Grand Lodge of Texas, unfortunately.
It'd be a lot harder.
It would be
Yes,
a
it
lot
would.
harder. And it is a really nice building. So,
Don't get me started.
Yeah, we'll save that.
So John, was there something that drew you specifically to your Mother Lodge that, that made it stand out above all others to you?
Oh, absolutely. And that ties in also to why I'm doing Masonry 101 at Lodge 12. I started looking for a lodge in about 85, and I didn't join until 95. I went around interviewing lodges, finding out when they met and the time, and going around just seeing, if I liked the guys. Well, most of the guys I liked, but I didn't like how they were doing things, or there was something that was just off-putting me. So I looked at every lodge in the area, and then finally we moved to Liberty Hill, and I told my wife, well, let's go downtown and see what it looked like, because we were actually about 5 miles outside of town. And I said, let's go downtown and see what it looks like. And I saw a sign on the road said Historic Masonic Lodge.
Ooh.
So my wife said, well, we're turning there, aren't we? And I said, yep. And I went into town, and Main Street is on one side of one block, and it's all 2- and 3-story buildings, all made out of old rock and limestone and sandstone and stuff, and all, wall to wall, no alleys in between them or anything. And right in the middle is the plainest building in the block, and it just drew me. And I didn't see the little Masonic sign on it. I just stopped across from it and said, that's neat, because I really like historic buildings. And so I got out, and as I was walking up, I noticed the G square and compasses on it, and the door was open. So I said, wonder what this is about. I haven't visited this lodge. Well, I walked in, and there was a man sitting there, and who became my Masonic mentor. And he stood up with a big old grin on his hand and held out his hand and shook my hand and said, hi, my name's Jerry Casebolt. Who are you? And we just became fast friends from then on. And he was the one that drew me into that lodge, because his infectious attitude and the way he does things. And I didn't know at the time, but he's pretty high ranking Mason. Even at the time, I think he was a red hat, and one of our best symbologists for this area for sure. And that's what drew me to Liberty Hill. Now, like I said, I'd been looking for 10 years. During that 10 years, I read voraciously, because once I got past my dyslexic scare, reading's what I do. I don't read very fast, but I read a lot.
Yeah.
And after I joined Masonry and went through the grades and became a Master Mason, I realized that what I'd been reading, I really didn't get. I got the surface stuff that you can get, but most of the stuff that I'd been reading, you really needed to be a Master Mason to get it. And so that led me to start the Masonry 101 in Austin Lodge 12, because I wanted the young men to not have to go through the 10 years of trials and tribulations that I went to, and have to go back and reread all those books again. Because there's enough to read without having to reread them,
Yeah, that's no doubt. So what do you see as the overall weakness and strengths of our fraternity?
The weaknesses are lack of education for our own members. I have, and excuse me, guys, but almost all of your questions are going to refer me right back to Masonry 101.
That's good.
I've had Master Masons from all over the country sit in on my Masonry 101 for potential candidates, and every one of them will walk away going, well, I didn't know that about the craft.
I'm one of them. That's what got us to this point.
Yeah. And part of my working world, I was a special ed teacher, and I came to the realization that everybody's special ed, just in different capacities.
That's a truth.
So anyway, it just, it led me to really believe in the system that we're just not educating our brothers well enough, I don't think.
Yeah.
The strength is that we keep guarding our West Gate well. Mostly we do that. Every once in a while there's somebody that slips through, but mostly we do a pretty good job of that. And I think that is vital for keeping our craft true to its nature.
There you go. So this one right here is going to go, I know where the answer is going to go, but how do we improve that weakness? How do we improve on that education?
Everything has to happen at the lodge level, in my not very humble opinion, because I don't have them much, but I think the Grand Lodge can lead by getting out of the way. I really like last year's Grand Master Tommy Chapman said that we need education, and I believe that we do. And they did some good things, and in past years, the various Grand Masters have done good things in giving out portions for the lodges to read in lodge. But for the main part, those are kind of like canned speeches.
Yeah.
And it works much better if you can do it off the cuff. But if you do it off the cuff, that means you got to really know what you're talking about. And therein lies the issue. There's not a lot of guys who really want to dig into that much. And yet to me, that's where we've got to go. We've got to get back to the lodges and let them educate their members with assistance. And I think I talked with Brad some about this too. Many years ago, there was a conference, a Grand Masters conference called Fiat Lux. Can't remember which Grand Master it was, but anyway, it was a conference to bring up ideas. Well, one of the brethren there came up with the idea that we should have a site on the Grand Lodge website where we just give the formulas for what we do that's successful. If you have a pancake breakfast that's successful, how many pounds for how many people that you expect and that sort of thing. I mean, that's a very simple thing. And that's one of the things I've been doing with Masonry 101 is I've printed up a bunch of my basic formats, and anybody who wants one, I'll send them to them or give them to them or whatever to promote this, because it really does work. I've been doing it for about 12 years now. I might be getting ahead of your schedule a bit, but
no, not at all. Keep it going.
And to date, per capita, as far as I can tell from the statistics that I can find, per capita, Lodge 12 is raising more Masons than any other lodge in Texas.
On average, how many Masons a year would you say that Austin number 12 has raised in the last 5 years?
I'll give you statistics from last year. Last Masonic year, we had 35 degrees.
35 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So if you divide by 3, that would almost be 12 Master Masons. So,
I think we raised 10 last year.
10, yeah.
That's really seriously impressive.
Think about that. 36, what would that be? 35 weeks of degrees.
Yeah.
That's the bulk of the year right there. Take stated meetings, add another 12 to that,
You got a full calendar.
Yep, and we meet on Mondays, so you take away Memorial Day and Labor Day and the Monday between Christmas and New Year's, and yep, that's the whole year. Absolutely.
Yeah, and for any of our listeners that are maybe not Masons or just not familiar with statistics related to Masonry, anything more than, I would say, half a dozen is considered extraordinary, because it just takes so much work and effort to raise somebody. So if you're raising more than 6 guys in a year, that's notable for a lodge. Most lodges raise between 1 and 3 guys a year.
The vast majority do 0.
Well,
and that's not a knock. I mean,
no, that's just where they're from. Like Liberty Hill raised 1 last year, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a town of a population of 800.
Yeah. Well, an active lodge that is growing will raise between 1 and 3. A lodge that is holding steady will, raise none or 1. That's pretty crazy to think about, though. 10, holy.
It is. Yeah. So, John, what's your favorite aspect of Masonry and why?
Masonry 101.
I love it.
Like I said, one of my past jobs was as a teacher, and I know that the way to learn is to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys that come in fresh off the street, not knowing anything about masonry, you'd be amazed at how much stuff about masonry they can teach you. All you got to be open to it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I just, I love that aspect for it. And since I'm an arduous learner, that's the wrong word. I like learning.
Voracious?
Yeah, voracious. There you go. Thank you. I'm glad I thought of that. So it keeps me on my toes. I task them. I usually give them homework, and I task them every time to come back with questions. I said answers are good too, but I'd rather have the questions.
Oh, exactly.
So that's really my favorite part of it. Just generally, and I get to do that every week for an hour and a half, and it just, it's
fantastic.
It's salving for my soul.
No, and that's what I say. I mean, because I came down there for a festive board you guys were doing, and I just happened to get there early and sat in a chair, didn't even realize that was going on. And you started out the class, and Paul Rana finished it. But I mean, it was so easy to see you light up when you were doing that. And I knew instantly something's going on down here I need to know more about. Because I did. I left that. I got up and left from there. I was like, yeah, I learned a few things there myself. Of course, Paul takes you in the deep end of the pool real quick.
Oh, yeah. Paul does that.
Oh, yeah. I've known him for several years, and he has always been that way, man.
He's swimming in the deep end, man.
I'm just looking for the life preserver.
So let's talk about, let's jump into kind of the main meat of the subject then and talk about the candidate process at Austin 12. John, you mentioned, the guys that come in right off the street teach you a ton about masonry. How do most candidates come to find out, or how do most prospective candidates come to find out about joining Austin 12 and how to join?
I'm glad you made that distinction, and I'm going to have to correct you on a little bit. While we give the Masonry 101 at Austin 12, I really don't care where they join. In my, there again, not very humble opinion, Austin Lodge 12 is the best in the area. And I've had several men join just about every lodge around the area, mostly because of where they live. Because I'll tell them right off the bat, the first part of masonry is going to take a lot of your time, and so you want to be either close to where you live, close to where you work, or somewhere in between. And I really do my best to scare guys off because I am very serious about guarding the West Gate. In fact, the first article I ever saw on guarding the West Gate was the one I wrote about 20 years ago. So I'm very serious about that, and I try and scare them off. I just say masonry is not for everyone. While it's not overly expensive, neither is it inexpensive. I will tell them about the history of the Grand Lodge of Texas and why it is known in the world of Freemasonry as one of, if not the hardest grand jurisdiction to join, because we have memory work and a not insubstantial amount of memory work.
Yeah.
And then at Lodge 12, we have the tradition of learning both the questions and the answers.
Ooh.
Now, I will tell them right off the bat that is not something we can require of you, because the Grand Lodge says that you can just learn the answers. However, I also tell them that is our tradition, and if you want to join Lodge 12, you should buy into that tradition. Yeah. And everyone who's joined has.
Yeah.
Now, listen to the benefit of it. This is the best thing. This is what brings it home. As quick as and you have to do all of the all of the EA at one time. You can't break it up into 3 sections like is allowed.
Gotcha.
That's also our tradition. Well, what happens is when a guy has finished learning the first section of the EA, guess what? He knows both the questions and the answers. He can start teaching the next guy. And
Yeah.
since we have so many candidates in the line at any one time, we really need a bunch of instructors. So every candidate becomes an instructor after each section that he learns. And remember what I said a little bit ago? The best way to learn is to teach.
Yes.
So those guys that have learned their first section, now they're teaching it. They really get to know what's in that. In fact, we've had a few guys write papers about each degree before they move on in it. And that's one of the ways that we retain them too. If you keep them busy, they're going to keep coming back.
Yeah, they feel like they're a part of the system.
Absolutely.
That's no doubt.
And a very important part, the only way that you get into Masonry is by doing what they're doing. And that's, they realize that right away.
Yeah, and I've got a real big kick right now about lodge culture and how each lodge should have their own culture. And so I love that you guys prep your candidates of, hey, here's how we do it. We can't require these things, but we strongly suggest that if you're going to join this lodge, you adhere to these traditions because they're going to. You know what I mean? In the end, these guys want to be challenged in ways, and when they're all said and done, it just feels a little more, you climb the tall mountain instead of the short mountain.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what I continue with them after I tell them about Lodge 12, I said, if you take all of that into consideration, Austin Lodge 12 might be the hardest lodge in the world to join. So be careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
I mean, I try and scare them away. It doesn't work very well.
Yeah, because I think that a lot of times has the reverse effect, but gets them ready for what they're getting into. Because, it's not an easy task, and it shouldn't be presented that way. We've got a past master that likes to say, look, we might want you, but we don't need you. And he does the same thing. He tries to just lay it out there and scare them a little bit to really make them think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And something that I tell prospective, or I guess I'll say aspirants, something that I tell aspirants that visit the lodge is, hey, Masonry is not for everybody, and that's okay. We're not making a character judgment on you, although sometimes we may make that character judgment because we have to, right? But generally speaking, if you're not a fit for Masonry or you're not a fit for our lodge, which that's a different discussion, because some people may be a fit for Masonry, but not for a specific Masonic lodge.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Not everything is for everyone.
That. Yeah.
No, and we do have to do a good job of identifying that.
Yeah. Well, and also I wanted to chime in on terms of lodge tradition at Austin 12. To be fair, the lodge is the one that determines proficiency, right? So legally you are required to ask every question, and the lodge determines proficiency. However, Grand Lodge law does not state how you determine proficiency or what the bar for proficiency is. So if you say the bar for proficiency is knowing the questions and the answers, the mechanic of it is asking all the questions. But the bar for proficiency can be separate from the mechanic.
So. Well, and we do have our main instructor is also our secretary, and he's been instructing for probably 20 years. He's an A certificate holder, and he knows Masonry inside and out. You have to go through and get it okayed by him. And so that's one of the things that we tell the guys, if Ron okays it and you okay it as the candidate, then we think you're ready. What you do in the lodge room might not fit your standards. And if Ron says you can do it, you're in. Now, just last week, we had an EA ready to turn in his work, and Ron said he's ready and everything. Got up there, and he was just frazzled. He could make it through the first section, and that was it. And he himself said, guys, I'm sorry. I thought I was ready, and I was ready with the words, but I wasn't ready in a mental sense. And he said, I don't want to waste y'all's time, so let's put this off until I get myself mentally prepared.
Wow.
And that's one of the, that's a great candidate.
That's a testament to the culture there, though, that he has the comfort to make that call. I mean, that's embarrassing, but he obviously felt very comfortable.
Well, it also speaks to really strong work ethic too.
Yeah.
So that's somebody who is concerned with providing good, honest results that stand up. And to say, "Hey guys, I need a breather. Let me come back to you on this." That's strong work ethic, and I like that.
No.
Yeah. Well, and he has since turned it in perfectly.
Of
You know,
course.
just
Yeah.
he got his mind together. You know, he was worried about the words and realized after that he had the words but didn't have his mental.
That's good men getting better right there. That's so beautiful.
So, John, what is the first step that a prospective candidate needs to take after establishing contact with the lodge? So, let's say that this is an aspiring candidate who does plan to join Austin 12, not necessarily just a regional lodge. What's the first step after establishing contact with the lodge?
Well, we meet every Monday at 5 o'clock, and that's on our webpage, and that's mostly how people come to us. Is either, I mean, it used to be through the Yellow Pages because Austin is, an A, and so if they're looking for Masonic lodges, they came across Austin first. So that's kind of a bonus. Just,
That's awesome.
for anybody out there listening who wants to name their lodge something, keep that in mind. It makes a difference. Yeah, Ard Wolf, that comes before. So I present this kind of a syllabus, and it's a 5-section syllabus, and I tell them if you want to join Lodge 12, and this is, I tell them it's the same for any other lodge too, but if you want to join Lodge 12, you have to have at least 2 people from the lodge you join to sign. And guys from Lodge 12 all went through this system, and they're not going to sign it at the first time they see you. They're going to have to get to know you. So I require them to come back for at least 5 weeks so that they can hear one of each of the syllabus points that I make. I have history, the organization of Freemasonry, Masonic symbolism, Masonic philosophy, and then on becoming a Freemason. Now, I require them to be there for that long at least because I said, for one thing, Freemasonry is a service organization, and the way that you can help us and get to know other Masons so that they might potentially sign your petition is that you can help in the kitchen. Since we feed every Monday, there's an opportunity for you to get to know other Masons, talk to them, and find out more about Masonry. Since Masonry does not have a single spokesperson, I said, what you're hearing in this table in front of me is Masonry from the context of John Brengle. And that's just one point. And so you got to get to know them. You got to come back. You got to be consistent. And then I tell them the degree fees, the dues, and what we expect out of them. So I kind of lay the entire thing out, like I said, trying to scare them off because we got enough people like your past master said, we may want you, but we don't need you.
Yeah.
So what is the syllabus layout then? Because you mentioned some of the points that are on the syllabus, but what kind of, in these 5 weeks, are we covering exactly?
Well, I'm a little bit of a historian, and I'll take my history from a whole bunch of different sources. And so when I talk about the history, and the history specifically of Freemasonry, I liken it back to the first guy who decided to plant his plants in a row so he could tell them from the weeds. And I said that, to me, was really the start of Freemasonry because that started geometry. That was the first time that man created a straight line. And that was really the start. And I said, so, the Grand Lodge system started in 1717, and everybody knows that. We also know that Elias Ashmole and others were initiated in the 1600s. But we also know that every culture that built with rock had Mason companies. I mean, if you go back in history, Babylonia does, and Egypt does, and everything. So I start with kind of the basic overall history, and that it's really very loose. That the Masonic history is not written. It is written in parts and pieces, and you got to find it out for yourself. And then I go into the history of Texas Freemasonry and how we got started, and that brothers fought against brothers in the War of Independence, and that when Texas got started, we were a very new country. And then I go into when Austin Lodge 12 got started, which was 3 years after the formation of the Republic of Texas.
Yeah.
And that's the history part. And then in the organization of Freemasonry, I go into the Grand Lodge of Westminster in London, which was the first Grand Lodge, and how it got changed to the Grand Lodge of London. And then the Ancients got started, and then the combination of the two in 1813 to make the United Grand Lodge of England, which I call ugly, and everybody likes that. And then just the Grand Lodge system and how it functions. And then I go into Masonic symbolism, and I'll bring them to some of our, I guess, easiest symbols to assimilate that don't give away secrets. I'll talk about the circumpunct, since that's part of the EA degree, and how important that was, and go into some of the history of geometry and how that lends a hand into Freemasonry. I'll talk about the square and compasses, and how the square is one of my favorite symbols because it covers everything that we are about. It is an emblem of virtue, not any one virtue, but all the virtues, and we are all about the virtues.
Yeah.
And then I ask them if they have a meditation practice, because in my opinion, meditation is vital to becoming versed in Freemasonry, because it's a contemplative art. And if you don't have a meditation system, I will help them develop one. And I email them a blast of things. Have I emailed you, Rhit? I know that I haven't emailed you, Gabe. Well, I will. But you'll have to email
I'm going
me
to hit you up for it.
Yeah.
Honestly, the second you mentioned meditation, I thought to myself, no wonder Paul Rana is a member of that lodge.
Yeah. Well, I send them a link to a meditation on a website called zenmasonry.com because I wrote the meditation and I kind of like it. So I send them that, and I send them a list of virtues. I've discovered 139 in Masonry so far, still looking. And I send them the old charges that are in the Grand Lodge Constitution. And then some websites and some other things. You'll see when you get it.
Gotcha. Interesting.
So then I'll go into Masonic philosophy. I'll talk briefly about the virtues. I'll talk about deity and religion. We have in our lodge represented every major religion, every major culture. We've got people from China, Kazakhstan, Iran, Bolivia, Argentina, the Ivory Coast, Pakistan, England, and several states. But we've got a very eclectic group, and that makes it easy to talk about deity and religion. I tell them, if they have a holy book with them that means something to them, that they should bring that and take their obligations on it, because it's more meaningful. Since everything in Freemasonry is symbolic, and I stress that everything is, the book that you obligate yourself on is also symbolic, and if you can make it personally symbolic, it will mean more to you, and you will be a better Mason for it. However, if they don't have it, we have, we've got the Upanishads, we've got the Sutras, we've got the Quran, we've got several versions of the Bible and the Torah, and well, we don't have a real Torah, in the scroll. And then I'll talk about tracing boards a little bit. And then for becoming a Freemason, I have given them the website for the Grand Lodge and told them that they should visit all the lodges in the area just to make sure that they're joining the right one, because lodges, like people, have personalities, have characteristics, and you want them to be amenable both ways. It's got to be a two-way street. And then I talk a little bit about the investigation, how the system works. You know, everybody's asking, well, what does it take to be a Mason? Well, you come to this class, you turn in your petition, it's read in lodge, you are investigated, then a degree is put upon you, and you learn what happened in that degree through a series of questions and answers called the catechism. You can tell I haven't done this very much. And then I tell them about appendant bodies and you know, just briefly about Scottish Rite, York Rite, and Shrine. Mostly I don't go into like D. Malay or Tall Cedars of Lebanon or Philadelphia Society. That's a little deep into the woods. And that's basically my syllabus.
That's a pretty good syllabus.
Yeah, no doubt. And I like that too, because we have somewhat of a similar process, but we don't engage those candidates enough. And that's something we need to take a hard look at, Gabe, because that would be, you know, while we sit out there and get around getting to know them, we can add stuff like that in as well.
Yeah, I mean, we really don't have anything structured like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you email me, I'll send this along with it.
Cool.
As a PDF as well.
Yeah. No,
I'm trying to get this out to as many places as I can, because it works for us. You know, it's not that I'm doing the best of anything, but I'm doing something. And if the more people that get out, the more eyes that get on it, the better it'll be.
Right.
And I also expect feedback, by the way.
Absolutely. And I think it goes a long way just to set that standard before they ever come in, you know, that they're realizing that they're getting involved with something with a pretty dang high bar.
Yeah.
You know,
well, and frankly, that's what keeps bringing them to us. You know, their friends say, hey, if you want to do something real, you know, this is it.
Yeah. No, exactly. So in general terms, how long does it take a candidate to go from asking to join to being initiated?
Can't answer that question. I can give you a range. The longest I've had anyone sitting at the table before becoming a candidate was 2 years. The shortest is 5 weeks.
Gotcha.
And it's really, really varies in there. Most typically, it's at least 2 months, though.
Yeah.
Because they won't necessarily get there every time, and they also realize that sometimes I can't be there for whatever reason, and I've got several designated people like Paul, and they realize that they get a different sense from a different brother, and once they get out of that room, you know, they're going to be working. They're not going to be able to ask those questions. So that's why that one guy stayed for 2 years. He said, there's too much information here for me to just go off and leave it and join the lodge.
What are some of the frequently asked questions that you get from candidates?
I don't know. Well, since I have it, you know, I go through this structure, you know, and it takes 5 weeks. And if a guy comes in at history and I haven't done the becoming a Freemason part, they're typically going to ask, well, how do I become a Freemason? So what I've taken to doing recently is I'll put that, a really short version of that right up front for the new guys. I'll recognize, you know, when a new guy comes in, we have someone almost every week is new. And so, you know, I know that they're going to ask that. So I'll just, you know, go right off the bat. Email me. I'll send you the Grand Lodge website. Download that, you know, look on the website. I don't know where it is because it changes all the time. I can't keep up with it. But you'll find that there's a petition there. Download it. Read it. And then you can ask questions about, you know, what it's all about. But mostly it's about how do I become a Freemason? I mean, that's what they're there to begin with.
Yeah.
They don't understand what's going to happen in the meantime, you know, all this education that they're going to get that just doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And the next is about deity. And I tell them, you know, that, well, that's not something we can discuss in the lodge room. However, outside of the lodge room, that is more than appropriate to ask those questions. And I, you know, mentioned the Muslims we have, the Buddhists we have, the, you know, the Christians, the Jews, we've got American Indian shaman, just about everybody is represented in some way, shape, or form. And I said, so it's not Freemasonry that will keep you and your deity from joining. It will be you.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point. Gabe, did you have any more questions on the 101?
Yeah. So then it is kind of a solid 5-week cycle then, right? Like you're not rescheduling and scheduling based off of who's there or anything like that. It's just
nope. And I'm usually kind of the main gatekeeper. They'll usually ask me if I think they're ready to turn in a petition. Some of them get a petition and fill it out and bring it back the next week, the second week, and I'll go, oh, this is nice. Put it back in your folder. You're not ready. So I'm a bit of a hard nose about it, but I think they appreciate it at least eventually.
Yes, that's the key. It may come in time, but it will come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, our lodge uses a rather lengthy process to get to know aspiring candidates, and we've had several guys, tell us after they got initiated, "Hey, I'm glad I waited this long."
Yeah. Well, the strong ones, the ones that are worth it, will appreciate that.
That's it. And we also don't have a big problem of losing EAs either. Now, we lose them on the front end during that process of getting to know them. They realize, hey, this isn't for me.
Right. And that's where they should be lost, frankly.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So when it comes to the investigative process of the petitioning process, what, if anything, has Austin number 12 implemented in addition to the minimum required investigative process?
We require that at least 2 of the investigation team go to the home of the candidate. We request that all 3 do. And we'll tell the candidates right up front, too. And also that we want your entire household there if that's good with you. Because, sometimes, first of all, it's not an easy process necessarily. It's not particularly arduous, but it's not real easy, too. And you kind of need the support of your household.
Yeah.
And so I said it's important for your household to be there, your wife, roommates, or whatever, so that they can ask questions and so that we can answer questions that they haven't asked. And that's a really good reason to going to a candidate's house. Also shows you how he lives.
Yep.
Kind of important.
No, that is key.
I mean, for me, one of the biggest things is their dog in good condition? And I'm a dog person, but I always interact with the dog and see how their dog interacts with strangers, whether or not the dog is well trained, whether or not the dog is friendly, whether or not the dog seems like it's in good health and is being treated well. Because it's one of the it's a real marker of a person's quality is how they can treat an animal that is dependent solely on them.
Yeah. Or cats.
Yep. Well, I'd argue cats are a little bit more independent. When it comes to cats, you want to look at how well the cat has trained the human. Not the other way around.
Well, the last investigation I was on, which was I think 3 weeks ago, the guy had 2 cats, and one of them hid in the bedroom all the time. He said, "Well, I walked in, the cat came up, sniffed me, and rubbed up against me." And he said, "She's never done that." I said, "Well, I'm special. I'm an animal too, and they know it."
That's greatness.
So, as a group, the members of Austin number 12 exhibit a very wide range of personalities, backgrounds, all that jazz. But they all mesh very well. What qualities do you look for in a man to ensure that this kind of diversity is maintained and celebrated?
They come to us that way. We really don't have a process for that.
Nice.
I think just having a bunch of the guys in the 101 room while we're doing that, because there's usually at least 5 or 6 Lodge 12 members and other Masons around too while we're doing that, and I encourage everyone to engage the potential candidates, just to let them know the diversity of ideas that are out there of what Masonry means to the different people. And, we've got everything from, an 89-year-old guy who can barely move around, and he's a curmudgeon, and he's not sure if what I'm doing is right because I'm letting way too many secrets out. And he will sit there and engage. So, I don't care if he's got that idea. I mean, we're still good friends and all, but, he's
Yeah.
John, I don't know. You might be letting too many cats out of the bag here. But he'll engage, all the way down to the 18-year-old that just got initiated,
Yeah.
And so we present that to them before they even, get into the process. And I think that helps a lot for them realizing, oh, my weird ideas might not be that weird.
No, that's the truth. There's a place to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of them really do. After the first time, they kind of go away looking, like flabbergasted. What the hell did I just walk into?
Yeah. Well, I think, and that was one of my takeaways when I first started visiting the lodge. I walked out of there kind of with that sensation of, oh, these are my people.
Yeah. 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 Where
they're all as weird as I am.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to degree work, what are some of the aspects that you feel Austin 12 does well?
Well, having done 35 degrees last Masonic year, we got some really good ritualists in our lodge. One of the best things that Lodge 12 does overall is act during the degrees.
Yes,
we have actors. Now, when we are trying to get a certified degree going on, of course, we get counted off all kinds of ways because we act. But that's okay. We're doing it for the candidate, not for the score.
I love it. Yes.
So and I have to say I have some small part in that because I'm an actor and I like to express myself.
Yeah.
And when I take on a role, it's a role. I don't play myself in that role. I play somebody that is that guy.
Yeah. No, and I love the theatrics, working with guys that get into it. But what you said that I think every lodge should focus on is that you're doing it for the candidate. That's the game changer. That's where the drive to act comes out of. When you start focusing everything on that candidate and doing that degree for him, you just start looking for every way you can make that thing better. And you'll be surprised at what comes out of it.
Well, can I add an addendum to that?
Please.
We do it for the purpose of initiating guys into the fraternity. That is our purpose for doing that. However, I believe that the degrees really are for the guys on the sidelines who are already Masons. Because, man, when I'm there, not in the degree, I get so much out of it that I did not see before. And it's amazing when a guy actually acts, he puts a different emphasis on a different part of the syllable, and you get something different out of it, even if it's the same guy that did it last time.
Yeah.
He just does it a little different. You go, hadn't thought about it like that.
That is the truth. That it is. I mean, even for those acting, because I've been in the middle of degrees before, or whatever I'm doing, and epiphany hits, and it's like I'm looking for something to. I got to remember this.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Not multiple. I love it. What's next, Gabe?
After a candidate is initiated in Austin 12, what is the process for learning the trial lecture? Are they assigned mentors to teach them, or does the lodge have a specific instructor? I know you mentioned that, but that's what
I mentioned it before. We have a specific head instructor, but if you go through the system in Lodge 12, after you learn the first section of the first degree, you are always an instructor. So everybody who is past that point in Lodge 12 is an instructor.
Right.
That's just the way it is. And Ron, our main catechism master, makes sure that they stay up on it. One of our best teachers is one of our newest Master Masons. I don't know if we're supposed to mention names on it, but I'm going to. He's a great kid.
Yeah,
His
sure.
name is Akhenaten Dable, and he's from the Ivory Coast, and he has a very strong French accent, and he is so good with the candidates. Everybody just loves him because, for one thing, with his heavy accent, they've really got to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And they're always encouraged, ask questions. If you didn't understand or didn't understand the word or whatever, ask questions. And he's one of our most sought after teachers.
Wow, that's awesome.
So
Nice.
it's just amazing. He's only been a Mason for less than a year. I mean, a master for less than a year.
Yeah. No, and that was one of the valuable things in my experience when I was going through the catechism process was that my instructor at Fort Worth Lodge had me turn around and start teaching EAs as soon as I was, ready to give my, my trial work back. So that was very valuable.
Didn't you find that valuable?
It was immensely, what's the word? It was very empowering.
Mm-hmm.
It was very empowering. It felt like I had a lot of control over my progress in Masonry. How long would you say it takes on average for a candidate to progress from an entered apprentice to a catechism returned traveling man master mason in Austin 12?
There again, there's a really wide range, but average is probably 2 to 3 months.
Nice. So they get in and get to working.
They get to working, yeah. There's like I said, there's a couple of guys who are really delving into it and took me serious when I said you should write a paper before you progress, and they're doing that, and so they're taking much longer. They're usually timing out. So
yeah, and that's not a bad thing.
No, and one of the guys is a lawyer. I know it's not because he's not trying. He's writing. He's writing, and I've read his first essay on the entered apprentice, and it is brilliant.
Do it your way, man. That's the trick to this whole fraternity.
Yeah. Well, and frankly, from my mother lodge, Liberty Hill, there was a guy who worked 3 times a week, every week, to learn his catechism, and it still took him 2 years to learn his EA catechism. He just, he didn't memorize well from mouth to ear.
Yeah.
And once he became a master, he became the teacher. And man, he's a kick butt teacher. He's great because he knows that stuff.
Yeah.
Once he gets in there, it doesn't leave. But, he had to go over time on every one of his degrees. So that's not a bad thing.
Do it your way. I mean,
Yep.
Used to take a lot longer in the olden days.
Well, and there are some people on the continent who remain EAs their entire life.
Yeah. My grandfather was one for 27 years.
Yeah.
So after they're raised, like Gabe said, traveling, turned in proficiency, what are some of the things that Austin 12 does to keep guys active and finding value?
Well, we have quite a few philanthropic efforts. We're partnered with an elementary school, and we do things several times a year with them, which requires quite a bit of manpower. We have right now we've done taking applications for scholarships, but this year we got 203 applications for scholarships.
That's amazing.
What?
Well, our name is out there, and they know that we give some pretty big bucks, and
that's awesome.
And so we got people going through them, and that's a pretty arduous task right there.
Yeah.
We participate in the food pantry, so we're gathering food all the time and taking it down to the food pantry. We've got several cooks and chefs in our midst, and so they're concerned with homeless people and not eating, and so anything that we have left over, they box up and they dispense it throughout the community. Let's see, we're actively promoting a fundraising thing for the district to get an endowment for Dell Children's Hospital, where we have the G square and compasses on the front of the building. We've raised about $30,000 to that effort now we expect to raise another 50 this year.
Nice.
And then teaching, like I said, everybody's a teacher. We have so many degrees that almost everyone is learning parts for the degrees. And that's a fairly constant thing. Because the lectures are pretty long and arduous. And if you've only got one or two guys doing it, that's asking a lot when you're doing that many degrees.
Yeah.
And so we have
Yep.
a lot of people learning the different longer parts. We just gave out 2 Class A certificates last stated meeting, which was 2 weeks ago.
Sweet.
So yeah, we're fairly active.
Nice. Yeah, because it sounds like you get a lot of load just keeping up with the degrees.
Yeah, that's the truth. Well, having done that many degrees, though, I am, because of my position as marshal, we have our degrees separated. The entered apprentice is done by the master of ceremonies, the fellowcraft by the marshal, and the masters by the senior deacon. So putting the degree teams together is really pretty easy. You can almost just wait until the night and see who shows up and just assign the degrees, because with doing so many degrees, everybody knows a whole lot of parts.
Yeah. And if you do them
special.
right, like you guys are doing, it's not going to become a grind, because I know the team I work with now, I look forward to working with them.
Yeah.
No,
I was going to say the degree team that we have now, I wish it was bigger. That is for sure. I wish the regular degree team was bigger and that more people knew more parts. But I was going to say, even with what we've got right now, I mean, you could probably pick up in a couple hours and say, hey, guys, we have a Master Mason's degree in, 6 hours. Get ready. And you'd get a great degree. And you could walk in and say, hey, guys, we've got a Master Mason's degree in 30 minutes, and you'd get a pretty decent degree regardless.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's not a very usual happenstance.
Yeah.
No.
So,
Big mountain
with
to climb.
37 degrees a year, raising 10 guys a year.
Only 35 degrees.
Oh, 35. Sorry. With 35 degrees and raising 10 guys and Masonry 101 and all of these philanthropic efforts that you're involved in and stated meetings, what does the monthly agenda look like? What does a typical monthly agenda look like for Austin 12?
Well, we meet every Monday. Our stated meeting is on Thursdays, or on third Monday. We also meet Thursdays specifically for teaching. So we meet twice a week at least. And then all the other stuff happens other than that. Our secretary is paid, and he's down there every day, because it's, while we don't have, our lodge isn't huge. It's about 240, I think, now. With as much activity as we've got going on, he's got a lot of paperwork to do. It just fills in. I've finally got I'm on the campus activities committee for Matthews Elementary, and we meet once a month, and I finally got them to put it on a Monday, because I live out of town. I live about 20 miles away. And I was having to come in an extra day to go to that. And so I got them to move it to it's a Monday. So I said, I'm always here on Monday, so let's change it to that. And we try and kind of group our activities around Mondays and Thursdays. We do an occasional degree on a Saturday if we need it. And last year we did need it a couple of times. But mostly we're able to keep it between Monday and Thursday.
Fantastic.
Nice.
And it's because of input by a whole bunch of guys, like those 203 applications for scholarships. There is, I think, 10 or 15 guys doing that. I forget. They'll call them down, and then it'll go to a 3-person committee, and but yeah, it takes all of our bodies to run this thing. You're right.
It's awesome.
So it's good that we have a very active lodge.
Yeah. Keep it building.
Mm-hmm.
So, Rhit, do you have anything else?
No, I'm ready to wind this bad boy down. This has been jam-packed with good stuff.
Fantastic.
I want to offer one more thing,
Yes.
if I may. One of you mentioned at the very earliest, that's making that good man better.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bone to pick with that thing that we keep saying in Masonry, that Masonry takes good men and makes them better.
Oh, please.
That infers that just by joining the lodge, you'll be a better man. And to some degree, you will, because you'll be around better men than what you've been hanging out with, almost regardless of your circumstance. Yeah. However, and I tell the 101 guys, I said, the only way to really get out of Masonry, what it's meant to do for you, is to be active. You've got to be active. You've got to come down. And just like we're discussing things, you need to get a discussion group going. That's why you need to meditate. That's why you need to converse with other well-informed brethren. And in fact, on the front of my business card, I have this. Through the strengthening of the character of the individual man, Freemasonry seeks to improve the community. And I tell them that is ultimately our goal. We want the world to be a better place. And we're doing it by improving ourselves so that the people in our circle of acquaintance will recognize there's something different about this person. And I will let them know that everyone who meets me, within 5 minutes of meeting me, they'll know I'm a Mason.
Yeah.
And I do that not because I love Masonry, but because I love what Masonry does for me. I'm a human. I screw up all the time. And by wearing that G-square and compasses on my hats, on my cars, on my body, on my fingers, that helps me be a better man. And it's through that constant investigation. And I tell them, the minute you walked in, you started being investigated. And if you become a Mason, it will never quit. And I said, to me, that's a real strength of Freemasonry in general, is that we're all looking out after each other and for each other.
Fantastic.
I like it. Maybe it should be providing tools to help make good men better.
Yeah. If you don't use the tools, what good are they?
It's exactly right.
So on that note of unity, this is our fraternal quote of the week. Masonry was not made to divide men, but to unite them, leaving each man free to think his own thoughts and fashion his own system of ultimate truth. All its emphasis rests upon two extremely simple and profound principles: love of God and love of man. And that's by Brother J.F. Newton.
Yep, Reverend brother.
Reverend, oh yes.
Yes, John Ford Newton.
Yeah, I thought that was very fitting.
Yeah, perfect for this conversation.
Yeah.
So, Rhit, let's do closing thoughts. You first, me second, and then we'll have John close us out on closing thoughts.
Sounds good. So for me, the biggest takeaway, which we really didn't even talk about in this episode, is visiting. Because happen chance, I just got an invitation to ride down with Chuck for the festive board they were having down there. And again, just happened by chance to get in there and get to listen to the 101. And it's something that's been on my mind to bring back to my lodge for quite some time. So I can't encourage guys enough to get out there and go visit and look for those best practices. You may not always find them. You may find some on the opposite end, things not to do. But eventually you're going to bump into something that's going to be so profound that it is a key you need to bring back to your lodge. Because that in my lodge, that's one of our weakest points, is what we do with our candidates coming in. And when I saw that, it was just like, this has got to, we got to bring some of this back. So my biggest takeaway is go visit. You never know who you're going to bump into.
Yeah, when I started reading the outline for this episode and contributing to the outline and all of that, and talking to Rhit, and now after talking with you, John, I really want to bring this to the lodge, because we have this whole thing at Fort Worth Lodge of, oh yes, our investigative process is very difficult, and you come and meet with us for 5 months or however much. And only once we know you do you get to petition? And I think that's worked well for us so far. But it's also very unstructured. And it leaves us a lot of times kind of waffling where we go, well, hey, Mr. Joe Schmo out there, he's been visiting there for 5 months. Is he ready? And, we'll get a couple of people go, no, he's not ready yet. We don't know him, da-da-da. And it'll be very well justified. And then 2 months later, it's like, hey, Mr. Schmo out there has been visiting. Do you think he's ready? And sometimes you'll get this idea of, well, I'm not really sure. And I think a lot of that is born out of the fact that we don't have a structured program for it. It's just very informal.
Yeah.
Now, by the time we initiate these guys, we're friends with them and we know them, And maybe we've even gone and grabbed a beer or two. But it's not as educational and structured as it could be. And I think we'd benefit a lot from that.
Yeah,
so
we
this
need to
was
make that a
this was
two-way
very
street.
enlightening to discuss, and something I definitely would like to see us implementing in Fort Worth Lodge. But John, if you have any closing thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners, go for it.
Well, what Rhit said right off the bat, I'll start there. Visitation is, to me, vital. It keeps you fresh in your own lodge, and it does let you see what other lodges are doing out there. Now, I'm one to always keep my eyes open and my ears open for anything, and I have yet to go to a meeting, a degree, any Masonic function where I did not learn something. And I'm going to give you the crappiest example I can of that. I was in a lodge in South Dakota, first lodge I'd visited in South Dakota with my father, and it was the lodge of my high school hometown, Belfouche, South Dakota. And they do things way different than we do. I'd never been in a meeting where they did staff work, but they did there. But the worshipful master was this old guy who could barely stand up, and he shook all the time, and he read the ritual. And I leaned over to Pop when I saw him going through that 3-ring binder, and I said, is it legal in South Dakota to read the what we do in lodge? And he said, no. I said, well, we need to talk with him and the wardens afterwards. And so the two wardens were very young men. And I talked with both of them afterwards, and they said, well, Belfouche Lodge was about to close because no one would step up who was qualified to be master. This one guy said that he would, but he said, I'm too old, I can't remember it. If you can get dispensation for me to read it, then I will be master for a year, as long as you two promise that you will be wardens and therefore be able to qualify next year as master. And he said, then we'll go for it. Well, that saved that lodge, and now it's the most active lodge in the area. And that was about 98, I guess, something like that. And so I learned Freemasonry is such a system that it knows that there has to be exceptions to a lot of their rules, even their diehard rules. And that was a huge lesson for me, early on in my Master Mason career, that Masonry looks after its own. It does not want to kick men out. It does not want to close lodges. And if you don't do things right, they will, because they told that lodge, their version of the DDGM said, we'll give you 1 year. And if you can't bring it together in that 1 year, then we will take your charter. Well, they did it. And that lodge just has grown. And that was a huge lesson to me. So visitation is vitally important to me. I think that having a system like what we've got at Lodge 12 is another vital point for any lodge. And I would encourage anyone out there listening to at least take these 5 points down: a history point, an organization, a Freemasonry point, Masonic symbolism, Masonic philosophy, and how to become a Freemason. Just take those and make a little syllabus out for yourself. Your lodge history is going to be different from mine. But if you get it organized and present it consistently. Now, I have to admit, for the first year or two, I didn't get guys every night. In fact, there were some months when I went by and I was sitting there by myself. But you know what? I kept learning because I kept reading. And it wasn't a hardship on me. I was going to be there anyway. And so at the very beginning, it might be a little rough until the word gets out. And it's something that we need to do. I think that it's really vital for not only our growth, but our good growth. And as far as guarding the West Gate, man, we got to do that very assiduously. The Grand Lodge has a great system of going through how to interview the candidates, what to do, and between past Grandmaster Nanny and myself, I think we wrote a couple of good articles, and that's what the Grand Lodge system is based on. And it's a good system. If you can't find that, don't like it, get a hold of me and I'll send you my original one. It's a little dated, but it still works. And that's about all I got, guys. I really appreciate your interest in this and your help in Freemasonry and in general, and just for inviting me on it. It's been a hoot.
Our pleasure indeed.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, most definitely.
Brethren, if you would like to learn more about Fort Worth Lodge or the podcast, you can reach us at www.fortworth148.org. We are at Fort Worth Lodge 148 on Facebook. Our email is info148@fortworth148.org. You can learn more about our upcoming educational event, Texas MasoniCon, at www.texasmasonicon.com. That's texasmasonicon.com. We are at Texas MasoniCon on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The event itself is on Saturday, July 27th, and you can pre-order tickets for $55 at the early bird price while it still lasts. John, do you have any info or contacts or anything that you would like to plug?
Yes, for Austin Lodge 12, and to get a hold of me, I won't give you my personal stuff, but austinlodge12.org is the website, or you can look on the Grand Lodge website for contact information. If you contact our secretary, Ron Wright, he will be able to get in contact with me.
Awesome.
And I will share any of the information that I've got, including all the stuff that I send out to potential candidates.
Well, there you go. You got your bones for any lodge that wants to get that kicked off in their lodge.
Yep.
All right. This is Rhit Moore signing off.
This is Gabe Jagush signing off.
And John Brengle signing off. Thank you.